There's an epidemic going on right now in Minneapolis, and it has to do with your buttocks. I'm a huge fan of benches. When I'm out walking around, I love to just sit down on a bench and watch the world go by. But in Minneapolis, no one knows where to put benches. Not just where, but also how to build a bench, what area deserves a bench, as well as sort of minute details about bench placement. No one knows how to do it. You know, it's pretty sad, honestly. The neighborhood I live in has no benches whatsoever. There are these 3 benches, but as a bench guy, I cannot call these benches. They suck. There's this weird thing here in the United States where we just hate public leisure spaces, or at least people who run the city and businesses. They just hate public leisure spaces where people are going to spend their time outside their business. This is obviously, based in a lot of racism when it comes to loitering, which is really just existing. But benches are great for a neighborhood because they allow you to spend time out and about in your neighborhood without necessarily having to spend money and sort of paying for a seat in like a coffee shop or something like that. So what benches really allow you to do is just to enjoy the neighborhood, and who wouldn't want to do that? When it comes to great benches, I look for a few things. First of all, it's always about comfort. That's number 1 for me. If you're sitting in a bench, it needs to be comfortable. That buttocks needs to be comforted. Second of all, it's the view. You're sitting down, what are you going to be doing? You're probably going to be watching the world go by. So it needs to have a good view. The placement of the bench is also really important. If you're putting a bench in a space that doesn't really optimize the space well, maybe it's kind of too close to the sidewalk or something like that. I don't know. Or it's disruptive, like with noise and things like that. Another really important factor in benches is their sleepability. Sleeping is a huge thing that humans do. Everyone's got to do it. And everyone should have the right to sleep in their neighborhood. So let's check out some of the awful benches around Minneapolis. This first bench, I have a really deep hatred of. This is the bench that I wouldn't really consider a real bench because it's so bad. But I've spent hours upon hours sitting on this bench in so much agonizing pain because for whatever reason, there's no back. It's curved in the weirdest way. It's just not the vibe. It's always hurt my back after about 15 minutes. When laying down on this bench, low-key, it's pretty nice for sleeping. If you're someone like me who likes to sleep in the fetal position, this is a nice shape for a bench to sleep on, to be honest. But still a bad bench. Come on now. Now this next bench might look good at first. You're like, oh, that's a pretty good bench in a pretty neighborhood. But when you turn around, when you see the view, you're looking at an interstate. This massive, noisy piece of shit just sitting there. Why would I sit on this bench? I'm going to be so irritated. My anxiety is going to be through the roof. Much more than before I sat down. And our bench is supposed to lower your anxiety. This bench also has an interesting curvature, so laying on it is not comfortable at all. I tried doing this. It was just not the vibe, especially because of the sound. This is just a terrible bench. Terrible, terrible placement. Come on. You're disturbing nature. This next bench, unfortunately, saddens me. Because when I first moved to the area, this bench was a good bench. I would not be talking about this bench today, a couple years ago. This bench happened to face the other way. It was flipped around, and it had a much better view than it does now. It was facing this sort of rail yard area overlooking the river. It's hard to see in the depths of the summer with the foliage, but you get good views in other parts of the year. But for whatever reason, they put up this massive fucking fence and they flipped the bench around. Not a vibe. I haven't even sat on it since then. I also slept on it. And, you know, it's just one of those benches where I could catch some Z's, but am I going to be happy? Nah. This next bench really grinds my gears. This is definitely not a bench, but I had to talk about it. These are the stupid, like, leaning things that are at all the light rail stations here in Minneapolis and St. Paul. This is obviously just, like, hostile to the extreme. Like, oh, you don't have a house? Sorry. You gotta sleep on this thing that you can't even lay down on. You gotta sleep on the ground. This is just the dumbest concept of, like, making it harder for people to sleep, because at the end of the day, everyone's hurt by it. And then I'm just pissed off that, like, someone couldn't sleep. Like, come on. Why can't they just sleep, man? They're just trying to sleep. And the ground's probably cold. And at the end of the day, I also want somewhere to sit. I'm not trying to lean up against some stool thing that I can't even sit down on. So all in all, Minneapolis needs to get their bench situation figured out. There's literally no benches anywhere. But if you're lucky enough to find a bench, it's in the shittiest location ever. And it's not comfortable at all to sit in. Fix your benches, man. This is North Star Radio. Peace and love.